Well, today I wanted to go through the features of our marking gauge system, how it works and how we can adjust it for different jobs and purposes. The gauge is based around, the system is based around our micro adjust marking gauge. Consists of a manna gum body, brass components, milled out of solid brass. We use a PM10V blade, a round blade for marking. This is got a bevel on the inside which causes the blade to pull this fence into the timber, which makes it nice and solid when you're making marking your timber. It's also got micro adjust, which means if you lock off the back part, the back adjust wheel here, thumb screw, you can then adjust it micro here. One revolution of this barrel is 1 millimetre movement in the front, so a quarter of a revolution just moves this a quarter of a millimetre. So it's quite fine. It's got marks on here for you to gauge how far you've gone. It certainly makes it really accurate when you want to get right on the spot to mark your workpiece. The other parts of the gauge are marine grade stainless steel. There's also a nylon grub screw underneath, which you can adjust how much drag the system has on the shaft. We also manufacture a more simple version, which is exactly the same as far as performance is concerned, but it doesn't have the micro adjust component. It can be added to, like we'll show you shortly, the same as the micro adjust gauge, but just a simple version where you can just measure your spot and put the blade in position and mark as usual. It's just a bit of a cheaper version and a simpler version. It's our regular gauge. Now, this gauge has the feature of being able to remove the blade. The tool comes with the correct hex to do so. Just remove that blade. And now I can add a mortise blade to it. Now this mortise blade has got a little grub screw, and also we give you the very fine hex to tighten that up, and that locks it in position. You can put it where you want it on that blade, and then you can move it across the timber. So if you're putting, say, a mortise probably in the end here, you can centre that in the middle where you want it. Again, you can micro adjust. When you've got it where you want it, just lock it off, and that will stay there, and you can mark your mortise. Of course, this comes in a few sizes. We do it in 6mm, 8mm, 10mm and 12mm. But the feature of this is you can move it, centre it exactly where you want it on the timber, and it makes really strong marks on end grain, etc., and does a good job. So removing that mortise blade, so it was a cutting gauge and a mortise gauge. Now we have the ability to add a pencil attachment. Now this pencil attachment is milled out of brass too. There's a groove down this shaft which enables the thumb screws to wedge into to make it really firm. The pencil attachment works very simply. Just put your pencil in and lock it up. I like to put it on a bit of an angle, just a little bit. So using this item, it's got the same features as far as adjustability has with the using the cutting component, and that just works thusly. I'll just tighten that up, and you can easily mark. With that, so some people prefer a cutting blade, some people prefer a pencil. I think both work really well. With the cutting blade, you do get a groove, and sometimes it's hard to see. We sell this really nice fine mechanical pencil, 0.5 of a mil, which is fine enough to sort of get in the groove to mark down where you've marked. And you can get in the groove of the mark and make it more obvious if you want to, or you can use a pencil gauge first up, but whatever suits. So this, moving on, this tool can be obviously marking gauge, cutting gauge, mortise gauge, a pencil gauge. It can also be a panel gauge. Now, a panel gauge is simply a gauge that's got the ability to mark wider panels. How we do that is to add some length. You can buy these additional lengths. They come in 150s and 300s, and you can buy additional lengths to put in the tool, and that then becomes a panel gauge. Now, I'll just show you how this works. You can use the pencil gauge if you want, or you can use the cutting blade on the end, whatever suits you. But if you get a panel, for example, like this, and you want to cut this panel that's X length from the edge, it's quite easy to do, to adjust this. Again, you can use micro adjust if you wish to do it, or you can just lock it up without it, and you can just move that across thusly, and that makes a line that's absolutely parallel to the end. That can be quite a long one too. We can go longer and longer and longer. Just adding componentry, so that can go right down the length. Just we can add another length if you're working with a lot of panels and you want to make parallel lines or cutting lines. I've used 4 lengths on this, and for a big radius I had to do once, which I'll show you in a minute. But this all locks up. It's all stainless steel. It's nice and solid, and it's certainly capable of making quite wide markings with ease. So that's how our panel gauge works. We have, if I remove the body again, I'm left with just the shaft. If I put one of our trammel points, which are manufactured from manganese bronze, that's because we want it to be nice and hard, so that suits, keeps that point nice and sharp over time. Brass is too soft for this sort of work. Now, if I put a trammel point in one end, I can do a few things the other end. I can add a trammel point like this and use this as a trammel gauge. If I want to use repeat lengths across some of my work, or I can use it, again, you can add extensions to this that you may have, and then you can move this trammel along and have quite a long measurement system, which is very handy for things like squaring up drawers when you make them. You know that if the diagonals are the same of a drawer, the internals of the drawer, then certainly the drawer is square, so you can check one diagonal to the other and make sure the drawer is square, or if you're just repeating lengths, etc., etc. This is very handy. Now you can also fit the end, put the blade back on the end and use this as a beam compass, That'll cut a line around your workpiece, or you can have the pencil attachment. And that makes a really good beam compass if ever you're marking, just change the length or whatever, puts in the centre of the work or whatever it might be. You can be cutting out a round table, you can be making a curved front for a chest of drawers or whatever, and that sort of thing. But any curved lines or radii that you want to use can be used with pivoting with one of the trammel points and a pencil marker or put the cutting blade back on, whatever suits. But these can be added to lengthwise, so you can get a very, very long beam compass if you wish for big work. So there's quite a few features in this tool. It becomes, as I say, it's a first up a cutting gauge, then it's a mortise gauge, then it's a panel gauge. Just by adding more componentry, it becomes a pencil gauge if you want to use it that way, or a beam compass. It certainly has a variety of uses. You can buy it as a basic marking gauge, or you can buy some accessories that make it available to use all the other features of the tool. So that's how our marking gauge works. Thanks for your time. Thank you. Bye.